Claire Lyon, Dave Feinberg. Yeah, Claire Jones deserve a round of applause. You're absolutely right. Dave Feinberg. Russell Rowland. My name is Doyle Armbrust, and we are... Thank you so much. So you've arrived at the Once More with Feeling series, the show where we play a piece devoid of any feeling whatsoever, and then play it a second... No. I would totally go to that series, though, wouldn't you? They play it just like completely without any expression whatsoever, and then the second time they actually do it. I like that idea. Let's file that one away. No. So... You've heard us say before that we don't think that specialized knowledge is necessary to enjoy the music that we play. It can be fun, but not necessary. Really, you're always at a disadvantage when you're hearing a brand new piece of music because it's flying at you so fast, right? There's so much coming at you, you can't possibly kind of take it all in, or at least let's say there's parts of it where that's tricky. So with this series, what we're trying to do is bring you a newer piece of music, play it for you, discuss it with the composer, and then give you another chance, another opportunity at the end to hear it again and see how it comes across the second time, see what changes for you. Before we get going here, we're going to really quickly raffle some stuff off because it engenders empathy with the audience. So you should have gotten a ticket on your way in. Now, I should tell you, don't throw that ticket away if you're not a winner, because that is also your free drink ticket tonight. So thanks to our board member, Nina Kim, y'all get a free drink out at the bar. And thank you to our board president, Sam Orwig. We've got a really nice sheet cake from Benison's with Sam Adams' picture on it. So we hope you'll join us after the show for that. So if we could get Alyssa to come up here. Okay, so first up, let's do, our latest album, Enigma, which we'll tell you about in just a second. Let's have the first drawing be for the album itself.
691-8237. It's a long number. I'm going to say it again. Oh. You got it?
Yay. Nailed it. See us at the merch table. The second thing that we are going to raffle off is one of our posters. I brought up one of my favorites. This is from The Hustle. Did any of you come to this show where we learned to dance the hustle at the end? Yeah, all right. So we've, over the 11 years that we've been a string quartet, hired a number of artists around Chicago to make posters for us. You can have this one if you like, or you can choose one of that speaks to you out at the merch table. So, next number.
You get a drum roll, everybody?
691-8244.
Board members are exempted.
Yeah. Let's draw another one. Natalie.
Okay. 691-8270.
Hello.
All right. And last but not least, and I'm going to try to do this really, really fast. Oh my gosh, Enigma, a project that we have been working on for literal years and years and years and years, and then some more years. What is this? This is a piece by Anna Thorvaldsdottir, the wonderful Icelandic composer, brand new string quartet, her first string quartet, written for us. And the whole point of this is to play it in the Adler Planetarium. And we have her collaborator, Sigurður Gudjonsson, who's created this beautiful film to go along with it. So you will be sitting surrounded in 360 degrees by this beautiful film. So Coming up April 7th and 8th, there's going to be 2 shows each of those nights and a really swanky reception on the second day. But tonight we are going to, before tickets even go on sale at Adler, give away a pair of tickets to Enigma. So, come on.
691-8261.
Obviously, we hope that all of you will come out to that. This is really kind of the largest scale project we've ever taken on, and it's an amazing piece of music, and we think you're really going to love it. Plus, yeah, if you're like me, your 7-year-old self is going nuts inside, thinking about playing inside the Adler Planetarium. Okay, so why are you here tonight? We are going. Thanks, Alyssa. Okay, you're here because we are friends with composer Samuel Adams, who is somebody that we love dearly, who writes phenomenal music. You may recall that he was one of the composers in residence at the Chicago Symphony in recent years. He has written us a string quartet, and tonight we're going to play you a chunk of it. We're going to give you movements 4 and 5. And we are going to start right now with a playthrough of that. Then we're going to invite Sam up here to kind of unpack the piece with you. And then, of course, we'll play it again at the end. So thank you very much for being here. And these are the 4th and 5th movements of Sam Adams String Quartet number 2, Current.
Waiting on you, Doyle. Yep. welcome Sam Adams to the stage. Welcome, Sam. Get you set up.
So while Sam's taking time getting set up over there, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we know Sam. Sam and I first met, I just realized today, almost 10 years ago in 2012, when we were both living in New York, and I played another piece of his, and I don't know, I think we just like kept in touch. Like I think we kept in touch all those years and had like many more musical experiences, and I ended up moving here, and on my short list of people that I knew I wanted to work with, when I got the chance with these folks, was definitely Sam. And I think we wrote you, and you were like, yeah, that'd be cool, but like, I'm kind of busy. Right? You were like, I'm kind of busy right now.
I was like, I'm kind of busy, and then like 10 minutes later, I was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, right. And then shortly after that, you realized you were, in fact, going to be kind of situating yourself here in the Midwest, both Chicago and
Yeah.
in St. Louis for a little bit this fall. So
That's right.
it just kind of worked out.
Totally worked out, I think.
I was remembering the other day that this piece has had kind of a really long history for a piece of music. Tell us about how it first came to be. What do you remember of how we first got started on this piece?
Beautiful job, by the way, Quartet, and it's so lovely to be here. This is actually my first in-person event since the before times. So
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
it's a little overwhelming, but it's great to be with you all. I remember getting an email from you in 2015, I think, saying, "Hey, there's this thing called ear taxi," which I had never heard of. It's as I'm sure many, if not all of you know, an incredible contemporary music festival here in Chicago, which I guess had its second incarnation last year. Sorry I wasn't able to be there for that. And you asked me if I wanted to write a piece for Spektral, and as one does when asked if they want to write a piece for Spektral, the answer is, I'm busy. Wait, just kidding. Yes, no, the answer is yes, of course. Let's do this. And I wrote a piece.
There we are.
Oh yeah, there we are, the Harris.
Looking good, babe. Thanks.
Looking super good.
I'll give you my skincare routine later.
For anyone who's wondering, for that performance, we were playing with the lovely and wonderful Matthias Taka.
What a night. So I wrote a piece for this wonderful group, which was a set of short miniatures or bagatelles called Quartet Movement. It didn't seem like substantial enough of a piece to justify calling it a string quartet. I called it, it was a little wink to Mr. Schubert. And I had a really good time working with these 4 individuals. I mean, obviously they're incredible musicians, but they're also just a great hang. And I twisted their arm after that performance and convinced them to continue to work with me. And since the premiere in 2016 of this first little incarnation, this the seed of the piece, I expanded the work kind of in 2 different directions. I wrote 4 more movements. The first 2 precede quartet movement, and then there are these 2 subsequent movements that you just heard tonight. I gotta say, it's a little weird, like showing the end of a piece to an audience without any kind of context, but hey, everything's different now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, this piece has been through quite a journey, that's for sure. And the second slide that you saw was, thanks, Autumn. That is Autumn, our intern up in the booth, being awesome.
Yeah, Autumn.
Give her a round of applause. This slide right here is, I think, from the second performance we ever did of the piece, and this was a really special one. We had the opportunity to collaborate with the wonderful visual artist, Antonia Contro, who is also here tonight. Yes, another
Shout
round
out,
of applause,
Antonia.
please. And Sam was able to join us for that. So we got to experience the piece paired with a number of different kinds of visual art, which was, I think, really stimulating and something that inspired us to work together further. So I'm curious, I mean, I know a little bit about where you were at when you first started writing the piece, way back in 2015, 2016. But will you share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I was in transit, so to speak. I'd been living in the Midwest. My wife at the time was playing with the St. Louis Symphony, so I was spending a lot of time going between Chicago and St. Louis. And we were moving out west, I began the piece kind of on the road in a super transient state. I think the beginning of the piece was sketched and conceptualized. I think it was in Iowa. And it's interesting, when I listen to the piece now, I can tell that especially that third movement is kind of attempting to kind of ground itself in a way and find a certain kind of, not stasis, but find a certain kind of gravity, since the first 3 weeks working on it were kind of all over the place. And I didn't have any, I decided proactively to not avail myself to like the comfort of my studio. I thought it would be interesting as a kind of experiment to create a piece like without my crutches, so to speak, without my piano, without my DAW, without my electronic setup, and to just think, purely abstractly. And that's kind of how it all began.
Was that the Best Western residency?
Yeah, exactly. Highly recommended.
I do remember that summer being really fun for me also, because I feel like I would get these like little notes and like outposts, from where you were. You'd be like checking in from, I don't know, somewhere, New Mexico. I wrote like 4 more bars today or whatever,
Yeah, totally.
It was great. It was like little postcards.
Yeah.
So another question that I'm curious about, how early on did you decide to incorporate electronics in the piece?
Pretty early on. I was going back into that like early thread between you and I, and I think it was the first question that I asked, if I could incorporate some kind of digital media into the piece. I've been making electronic music since I was a kid, basically. I started with like digital audio workstations like Reason and Logic and Pro Tools for all the electronic music nerds in the audience. Woo! Go Pro Tools.
Clap if you
Avid.
love Pro Tools.
And I studied electroacoustic music, and I've always been really fascinated with the various ways and like the interesting challenges that are presented when incorporating acoustic media with like the fixity and sometimes like the sanitized quality of digital art. And I've found that, especially with my earlier experiments making electroacoustic music, that there was always a kind of like a valley between the digital component and the acoustic component, that like there was something about the lack of a kind of organic and chaotic quality. Even from like the most highly algorithmic music, I always felt like the sound itself never really like landed in the context of like a string quartet, for example, which is why I decided to follow in the footsteps of composers like Alvin Lucier, composers who have been thinking about electroacoustic music for decades and have found that a really satisfying way to merge and meld the acoustic with the electronic is through the like activation and the excitation of like objects, like resonant objects, like snare drums. So you probably noticed that there are these 4 percussive instruments on the floor making
Tonight's
all
concert
sounds.
made possible by Third Coast Percussion.
Third Coast Percussion, shout out. Yeah, and so since 2016, since when I started working on this piece, a lot of my electroacoustic music has really leaned into this kind of like hybrid approach of bringing these 2 sound worlds together in a really natural way.
I'm sure some people in the audience are curious about how it kind of works. Can you just very on a high level sort of step through what it is you've done?
Yeah, well, so basically what's happening is we have 4 snare drums, all of which have speakers. The front 2 have speaker cones, which I think might be like automobile speaker cones, like replacement speaker cones, and then the 2 in the back have these little transducer speakers, which make absolutely no noise if you pump sound through them unless they're actually touching some kind of resonant surface. And if you put this on a window, the window would effectively turn into a loudspeaker. Or if you put it on Doyle's head, it would effectively turn into a loudspeaker.
Prove it.
It is a hollow surface.
Is it a hollow
so
surface?
Yeah, it's like a hollow.
Sorry. Et cetera, et cetera. And snare drums are extremely beautiful. They're meant to, sound resonant and ringy, and it's the best sound in the world. I could listen to it forever. The sound of the snares being excited, even by like a very simple digital sine tone. It's just, there's something like really mesmerizing about it. I feel like I'm like watching a fire or watching waves slap on the ocean or something. Can we do a little demo?
Yeah, sure.
Can we do Q2?
Yeah. Just go ahead and hit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is this snare over here. And if I take off the transducer, it doesn't make any noise. Yeah.
Magic.
Good space bar. Yeah. Is that?
It's magic.
Yeah, it's
like
magic. It's magic.
I have a question since we're talking about the snares. So how would you characterize the relationship between, so there's us, the players, our acoustic wooden instruments, and then the snares, which I guess are also acoustic instruments, but in this case kind of turned into an electronic instrument, or sort of like a conduit for electronic sound. So how do you conceptualize what that dynamic is between us and the snares?
I mean, in a way, the snare drum with the transducer works like in a similar way to your violin, right? Like you have a hollow resonant surface, which is the body of the instrument, and then you have some kind of material that creates pitch, that creates frequency, and then, I mean, I would argue that your bridge is a kind of transducer, right? So in that sense, I think I kind of went with the idea that I could treat the 4 snare drums as a kind of like lo-fi version of what you guys are doing. So in a way, this piece is kind of like an octet. There are just 4 members of the group that are really terrible listeners and don't respond in real time.
Only 4? Sorry, you set it up so well.
Why were you looking at Russ?
Oh my god.
Sorry guys, I feel like I'm complicating things here.
You're doing great. You're fitting right into the vibe, Sam.
Yeah, no, so...
Sam, which drum emulates the crippling self-doubt?
Right behind you, buddy.
Yeah, no, sorry, what was the question? Oh yeah, how do the drums? Yeah, so yeah, no, I basically conceptualized this aspect of the work as a way to like extend your resonance, refract it, like embrace it, challenge it in a way. But I was thinking about it earlier today that there's no point in the piece where it's clear that there's like an antagonism that arises in the piece between the string quartet and the 4 snares. It's very much like they are part of a larger polyphonic organism, you know, like you guys are all singing Palestrina together. It's just 4 of you happen to be snare drums on the ground. But I mean, if we can lean into like the music theory nerdy stuff, I've been always really interested in not only like alternate tuning systems, but like specifically what happens when 2 different types of tuning systems come together, playing effectively unison. And so what you hear quite a lot in this piece is harmonic motion, in many instances like very tonal harmonic motion that is in equal temperament. So in a way that reflects how temperament is reflected on a piano, for example, where the octave is divided into 12 equal parts, with the snares that are often playing in just intonation, in a way that reflects how intervals like naturally exist in nature. And when the same kind of musical gesture, the same harmonic movement happens in 2 temperaments at once, you get these like really beautiful, like, I guess I could call them artifacts. You know, it's like another level of counterpoint that kind of hovers over the group, which you wouldn't necessarily get if you were playing perfectly in tune with the snares. You wouldn't get those like beautiful wobbles and rubs and all these like interesting sounds that I think are extremely evocative and fun to explore, and also like different with every iteration of the piece. So yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about.
So
that's exactly how I was thinking.
When you write music like this, in addition to having to think about it on a musical and aesthetic level, you also have to be like a coder, right? Can we show that next slide, Autumn? Can you talk a little bit about what it is that I mean, a lot of folks in the audience here might have some experience with Max MSP, or is it still called
This
Max?
is the first
MSP?
time I've ever busted out a Max patch at a show.
Yeah.
Probably
So
the
we just wanted
last
to
two.
show you all like
Weird
what it looks
flex,
like
bro. Weird
for
flex.
you know what he's done here. So can you just talk a little bit about what you have to do to make it happen?
Yeah.
Just in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of portions of the piece where there are, I can't think of a better word right now, so I'm just going to say the word abstractions, like a glissando that happens over a certain duration. So a pitch that goes from beep to beep, like a very, very slowly. And with a computer, you can make this happen in a at least near perfect way. You know, with ones and zeros, you can get the distance and the journey from one pitch to the next be like absolutely linear, and you can't necessarily with, you know, as a human being, right? And so that
I've noticed.
so when you're playing these kinds of things in unison, you get all these really beautiful artifacts. So the point being, in order to create the specificity and the exactitude of some of these musical gestures, the best way to do it is just with code. So, oh my God, I can't believe we're done.
Yeah, you can switch the slide off. But so you've had to program all your sounds in over a time grid, and then you're sending the time to us through these earpieces, and then sending and then coordinating all that with the sound so that we can play along with in a way that
Right.
that we don't have to be guessing where we're trying to hit the marks with the drums.
Right.
I remember that in the first iteration, which incidentally was one of my audition pieces. So this piece has literally been with me since day like -30 or whatever. But I remember in the first iteration, it called for 2 snare drums. So what was the process of adding the other 2, or like what led you there?
I feel like I don't really have a good enough answer.
You just wanted us to I have to like carry more stuff around.
Yeah, you should yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think, I mean, going back to what I was saying about like exploring polyphony between the quartet and the snares, I wanted to just have like a couple extra voices, but also I wanted to have the ability to have moments in the piece where the sound isn't always activating the snares on the bottom of the drum. So the front 2 instruments are actually disengaged, so you don't get the same kind of buzzy sound when the sound is going through them. So it was just, yeah, it was to answer your question, it was basically just like to give myself a little bit of a broader palette to work with.
Yeah, I mean, it feels also just like a nice symmetry somehow. Like I like having like my own snare. You know.
We thought it might be nice to play a little snippet of this, just so you hear the difference between the music with and without the snare drums. Get that context. So we're going to play just a short section, and we'll play it twice, so you can hear it with and without.
Yeah. So this is, if I can just kind of describe what's going on here. There's what I suppose Jacob Collier would call like a pyramid chordal type gesture. So you're hearing these upward reaching chorales, and it's actually quite tonal. It's in this kind of like F sharp major zone, and the snares are kind of sneakily introducing partials of this harmony that you wouldn't typically hear in this kind of context, and I think you'll be able to tell that the harmony is quite different when the snares are left out and when they're in.
Now with? Yeah?
Yeah. I like being up here when you guys play. This slide up actually, if I can just explain exactly what's going on here. So this, I forgot that I actually notated what's going on in the snares. You have the 4th and the 15th and the 27th harmonics of each of these kind of tonal centers that we're in. Can we just like demonstrate real quick what a partial would be? So if like, so that would be 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 7th, etc. So another thing that a computer can do is let you know what it sounds like when you hear the 27th partial of a fundamental. Can you play a 27th partial of the B? Yeah, right. You can't do it. But with the technology of what you can do with a computer, you can create a kind of hyper resonance. So this section, in a way, is like harmonically, I don't know, maybe not that interesting or creative, but it's really fun for me as a composer to be like, well, what if Russ's cello was like the strings were 15 feet long and you could actually hear all these really high harmonics? Like, what would that sound like? How would music be different? So
I can tell you I would be insufferable if my strings were that long.
So I mean, I don't know. Hopefully you could all tell the difference. But for me, it's a lot of fun to think about like resonance that isn't always clear, and finding ways to meaningfully like sonify it in performance. So that's kind of what's going on there.
Noise. So this is a question that I love asking composers, kind of no matter what the context is, which is, what were you obsessed with at the time that you were writing this? And it doesn't even have to have anything to do with what ended up in this piece or anything else, but your creative life is your creative life. So what were the things that were occupying your brain?
Does the piece sound obsessive? You don't have to answer that question. Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I'm an obsessive person. What can I say? No, there was a period between like 2016 and 2017 where, for whatever reason, I was really obsessed with the music of Schubert. I think I became aware. I was 31 at the time, so I think I was like, okay, well, that's how old Schubert was in the past. And so I'm a massive failure, and I'm going to write a lot of sad music about it now. Here we go. Just kidding. No, but for real, like I think that I've always been like deeply attracted to the music of Schubert. I mean, I grew up playing Schubert on the piano when I was a kid, like playing the impromptus and the sonatas, etc. And I think when I was younger, what I liked about a lot of the music was I think the reason that I liked it is like how it felt on the hands, that there was something kind of tactile about, especially playing the first set of impromptus. It was just like, it was really fun. I don't know. I mean, it's like a silly dichotomy, but I always preferred Schubert to Beethoven for some reason. But yeah, no, I mean, now that I am a jolt, some may argue against that, but I think that I have a different understanding of why I've been always attracted to Schubert's music, and I think it has to do with the restraint in a lot of the music, particularly the later music, which is such an absurd thing to say about Schubert, the late pieces. He was still such a young person. But beyond that, I think that there's something about like how tonality is treated in a lot of the music, that it's suspended sometimes to such great lengths that you're almost not hearing the functionality of it anymore. It's kind of like, okay, this is about this sound, and now we're going to be here. Like a secondary dominant, like an A7 chord might linger for like a minute or something, which is it's interesting for me as a composer, because it's like, okay, well, so it's not about the teleology anymore. It's about like the sound. In a weird way, there's like something about a lot of that music that's like color field painting, and I think that in a way, you can psychoanalyze me. I'm not going to do it to myself. But I've always felt that there's like a certain restraint in a lot of my music. And I've always felt like very attracted to a lot of composers who exercise a certain amount of restraint. It's why I love Monteverdi. It's why I love Stravinsky, Mozart. And it was interesting when thinking about this piece and thinking about what I would talk about with all of you, that I'm now realizing that unwittingly a lot of the harmonic decisions that I made are very similar to the kinds of harmonic decisions you would find in a late Schubert piece when moving from one kind of tonal center to another. There's this kind of sense of like falling backwards into new tonal space with a lot of Schubert, which I think the fifth movement in particular of this piece is basically doing the entire time. It's like consistently falling downward, always falling down, falling back.
Was there a specific piece that kind of this was zeroing in around of Schubert's, or was it just
No,
Schubert?
well, so like I said, I mean, I think it was all like these two things were kind of adjacent. Like I can't say that I sat down and was like, I'm gonna write a piece about Schubert now. I think there was just something about like what I was listening to at the time and the obsession with which I was listening to that music, to answer your question. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought like we could. Yeah, we have something.
We prepared an example just to show you all sort of the kind of harmonic movement that Sam was just talking about. Autumn, can you introduce this?
Yeah. Well, so this is like one of my favorite works, at least that I played when I was growing up. It's the late B flat sonata D960, and the way that the music transitions from the first theme to the second is not upwards. It's like I said, it's kind of falls down a major third. It goes from B flat to G flat. It's a very famous moment, but I think you'll be able to immediately recognize how the music, rather than kind of pushing you forward, just like gently like turns you into another direction, or like opens a door to another room to be in. And maybe we could play a little bit of. So right here. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's just not in a hurry. And yeah, that kind of falling motion, I think, is found in the fifth movement. At the beginning, you can't really hear it. Now that I've talked about high partials and everything, the beginning of the movement, you're only hearing this falling third motion in like the 27th partial. You know, so you don't get the sensation of the motion kind of falling back until a little bit later in the piece. You know, Russ, when your bass line starts to come in a little bit more palpably, you start to really hear that the music is falling kind of continuously over and over and over and over again. And then we land at this section when Clara plays this almost like singing type of melody, and the quartet is just doing the last couple of final falls before the very last paragraph of the work. Can we play a little bit of that section?
I love that part of this piece. I love it. It's so nice.
mean, in a way, it's kind of, to me, just my opinion, but it kind of feels like that's what the piece is in a way. You kind of have to like, kind of have to get there by gradually pulling things away and descending from the 27th partial down to earth. But to me, it kind of feels like, yeah, it's interesting. I have to say to show you the kind of the core of the piece without being able to show you what comes before.
Well, stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, we're actually.
That'll be our second set.
Well, just as an aside, we're heading out to California next week to give the full premiere of this work. It's never been performed in its full form, so that'll happen in Berkeley next weekend, and then we're going to go into the recording studio right after that, and we're going to record this piece. So you all will be able to hear the entire thing eventually. Let's talk a little bit about the concept of repetition. The piece that the fourth movement we started with has those cycles that just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, and then there's a chord change and it repeats 13 more times and then 9 more times. Can you talk about not only that section, but just your approach to repetition in this piece? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is some of that. I don't know, it's interesting. I for a very long time did everything in my power to not write anything that had any kind of repetition in it. Could have been like it was like my Boulez phase or whatever, It's like, but yeah, I don't know. I think I just came to a place personally where I realized like all the music that matters to me has repetition. Whether that's like surface repetition, like minimalist and post-minimalist composers, or if that's like the large formal repetitions that you'll hear in like romantic music, or if it's like smaller formal cyclical repetitions in like Hindustani classical music, or like when you're listening to Coltrane or something, like there's a lot of repetition in that music as well. It can just exist on like many different levels. It can be a micro repetition, or it can be a macro repetition, etc. But yeah, I mean, with this piece in particular, I think what enabled me to consider repetition to be an important part of the piece it was actually an experience I had with my sister, who's a visual artist, and she took me to SF MoMA to see an exhibition by a visual artist named Via Selmans, who I'm sure some of you know or have heard of. And I've always been a composer who is at least interested in like repetition in natural forms, or patterns in nature, and like trying to understand the conditions that allow those kinds of repetitions to exist, and further the conditions that make patterns break. Like it's always been really interesting to me to listen at least to the environment that we live in. And I encountered the work of Via Selmans, a Latvian American artist, and what I loved about it is the second half of her career. I mean, she's still working, but her later work is nothing but reproductions or transcriptions of patterns that we find in nature. So like waves in the sea, or stars in the sky, or pebbles on the beach, or like a spider web or something. Oh yeah, here's some of these. I have to say, because I know that there are visual artists in the house, like showing, visual art on a large screen like this is not the best. So go and see Via Selmans in real life, because it's completely taking away. You have to be there to feel the tactile quality of the work. So just in defense of visual artists. But yeah, there was this one specific piece that was, here's some more. This is Untitled Ocean. I think this is 1977. and they're all done with a free hand. I think this is graphite. And there was one piece that I really loved, which was rocks that she had found that had like an interesting pattern on them, and then she found, or she may have even made like replicas, and she didn't tell you which one is the found object and which one is the created one. And I mean, there are many things to say about Salmon's, but one of the things that I just was so awestruck by was like the amount of care and attention and detail that she was giving to like the smallest object found in nature. And to me, that was like, it unlocked something. And this was only a month before I started the second, the extra 4 movements of this piece. And so a lot of what you're hearing in the snares is my nod to Via Salmon's. It's like short little iPhone voice memos that I took like at the Pacific Ocean of the waves, like during a storm, transcribed with nothing but like my acoustic graphite, which would be like white noise and pink noise, these kinds of sounds that you can create with the computer, and allowing yourself like the most basic musical material to try to listen and recreate these kinds of sounds gives you certainly I don't know, it opens a lot musically, and it allows you to think about repetition in certain ways. But the other thing that I'll say about the piece is that in an abstract way, there's a lot of repetition, but in another way, there's actually no part in the entire piece, not just the 2 movements that you heard, where anything is like actually repeated twice. Even at the very beginning of the piece, when you're hearing these kind of hammered chords seesawing back and forth, there are elements in the music that are also fluid and continually in motion. So specifically for the 4th movement, the tempo is gradually slowing down, very, very, very slowly. It's almost imperceptible until you get to maybe like repetition 20 or 21, when you start to hear the music in a different way, right? And it starts to suggest maybe something, at least to me, this is my intention, that it starts to suggest something bigger than itself. Since we're talking about visual artists, I thought that I would mention someone like, can we pull up some of Agnes Martin? Another visual artist who I think encapsulates this idea of having abstraction and repetition never fully repeating itself. So this is also, if Agnes is watching, she's probably going, oh my God, I cannot believe you put my stuff on a screen. But the idea being that the abstraction is it's a rectangle, and there's a kind of pink color field, but what gives the work its presence and its humanity is that there's fallibility with each stroke, human fallibility. And yeah, to me, it's why I think her work. Can we show some more? We have a couple more. It has like such joy and radiance, and that comes to my eyes from the friction that's created between what's conceptually repetitive and what is materially not at all. And I think this is something that I tried to go for in this piece, that you're getting a sense of repetition, but it's kind of always changing, especially at the very end. Can we play a little bit at the very end of the piece? Yeah. So you'll hear there are all these little fragments of, I think it's 32 16th notes. And they kind of form a pendulum that goes up and down. But every time the pendulum moves in one direction, it either grows or contracts. So it's never the same thing twice.
At 8 clicks. I love that. Oh, thank you.
It goes well with the
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I love that swish motion that you have us doing in this section. It almost feels like an eraser or something, like something that like I do my bit and then like I wipe the slate clean and try again or something like that. I don't know if that resonates with you or not, but or what is it for you? Maybe.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I should say that this material is from the second movement. The second movement is basically like 9 minutes of this that like swirls and accumulates a lot of intense energy. So yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like large scale repetition, again, it's more interesting when things change a little bit. And I can't give you like a cerebral answer, but it felt, when hearing this music the second time as I was writing it, that there needed to be something about the material that was slightly different. The first time we hear it, we don't hear these little swish things. It's completely introduced as a new element at the end of the piece.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think it's my favorite sound that you guys make. I love it. And you're experts at it now.
Maybe it'd be interesting for people to know that we're using a technique. You can probably hear the sound is a little shrouded. So what we're doing is we're putting our fingers down as normal, but then placing very lightly a finger above that. So it's sort of dampening the string while we're playing, which is what gives it that quality.
I love the description of the beginning of this movement. It says noisy and quiet. It's like the beginning of a poem or something.
Did I write that?
Quiet.
I forgot.
So this last movement is also dedicated to Ingram Marshall, right?
Yeah.
And some of the other movements have dedications too, but not all of them. What is the significance of Ingram and his work to
Definitely. Does anyone in the house know Ingram Marshall by any chance? All right, cool. We got one. Ingram is first and foremost a very close friend. He is a composer who continues to be extremely close to my father, who's a composer as well. And so by the time I was a conscious person, Ingram was like there in my life. There's a lot to like about Ingram. He's pretty chill. He has basically no ego. He's just the best person. I love him to death. And he's a wonderful composer. His music is a lot like his personality. It's humble and it actually, since we're talking about Schubert, it in a similar kind of way is never really in a hurry. Like I don't think I've ever heard a moment any of Ingram's pieces where it's like, okay, like we're moving on to the next thing. It's so patient. The first real meaningful aesthetic experience that I had as a person was at an Ingram Marshall concert when I was like 6 or 7 or something. Up to that point, I really hated going to contemporary music concerts. But I went to this, I think it may have been Theater Artaud in San Francisco, which I don't believe exists anymore. A space that's not too different from the one that we're in right now. And Ingram was in the corner at the piano, and he had some like guitar pedals, which I think there were just 2 of them. I think there was like a reverb pedal and a delay. And Ingram's not even a particularly like accomplished pianist, but it didn't matter. He was there playing these beautiful arpeggios for like an hour, accompanied by images by a photographer named Jim Bankston. If that name doesn't ring a bell, some of you might know his work. He is an American photographer who's been in Scandinavia for the last several decades, and he's become kind of a master of photography of like murky, foggy, Nordic kind of fjord-like coastlines, and a lot of the work that he created, particularly in the 80s, I believe, ended up on record covers of ECM records. So if any of you are into like Jan Garbarek or like Keith Jarrett, that's the record label I'm talking about, run by Manfred Eicher in Germany. I think it's a Munich label. Is that right? Anyways, but the piece that I encountered when I was a kid, yeah, it's called Alcatraz. Very apropos, given that the subject matter of the piece was also foggy and murky and semi-aquatic. And I just remember sitting there feeling really stunned by the music. And I don't know, like in a way, I want to dedicate every piece of mine to Ingram because I feel like a total simpatico kinship with his music. But I don't know, I felt like there was something about this last movement that felt very kind of Ingram. It felt very Ingram.
Can we hear a bit of his music?
Yeah,
let's hear a little bit of this.
You say, yeah, we have a little bit of Alcatraz. So this is just piano and delay. Yeah, there's something about Ingram's music that feels like it's like always ending. You know, like every moment of his music is kind of like the finale. It's almost like his entire body of work is like one massive, like gradual morendo or something. It's not entirely clear to me like what it is that he's ending, but it's just, there's always a sense that yeah, things are kind of closing, and it felt appropriate for the last movement of my piece, which is, to my ears, effectively like a series of endings. That's how it sounds to me. So.
Well, speaking of endings, I think we've come to the end of this portion of the program. We're going to play the piece again for you, but before we do, we thought we would ask you all if anybody in the audience has any questions, anything that you came up tonight that you want clarity on, anything you want to know about before you hear it again. If there's any questions now, we'll have just a couple minutes for that. Don't be shy.
Yeah, I see some microphones attached to the drums here. Is it, you have feedback going on there?
No, those are just for the live stream. This is going out by YouTube, and so our sound engineers tonight set up microphones on all those so that he could balance that going out to the folks listening online. Yes?
Yeah, this is about what you talked about earlier about the friction between like just intonation and equal temperament and the drums versus the string quartet. I'm curious to know if you as players like feel that friction and if it's something you have to respond to, and if so, like what is that experience like?
Yes, we do. It sometimes feels disconcerting, but at other moments of the piece, movements that we're not going to play tonight, there are places in the score where we have to follow the pitch of the drum as it moves between different places in the scale that are not equally tempered. And so it's an interesting relationship, I think, because it takes this this sound, which in the rest of the context is maybe slightly unfriendly or definitely has some dissonance, and yet your personal relationship with that sound in that moment has to be one of like you have to love it a little bit to find it and be able to stick with it and play with it. So it's
I'd also say that, you know, we are not only reacting to it, but we are creating those differences. You know, we are planning which pitches to play in which system of intonation. So in a certain context, an F sharp might be slightly higher or lower. And in fact, we're doing that when we play Schubert as well. You know, we're constantly working within different tuning systems to, you know, in certain melodies you would want you know, certain notes to stack up in one way versus another, and so this you know, it's a common part of our practice is to deal with these different tuning systems and be able to create them together.
You know the excerpt that we played with the falling thirds when Sam was talking about Schubert? I've got a moment, 2 measures in there with like the dankest chord of all time. And it is so, it's like the camembert cheese of chords. And
Smells better
it
than
really,
that.
it's like when we get to that moment, it's, I mean, it resonates in its own way. It's not that it sounds wrong. It just like resonates in such a funky way that like when we get there, my instrument's just like, and it's, I don't know, it's very satisfying.
Any other questions? Yes.
I'm wondering if on the drums, are there moments of synchronization that are random that occur, or did it really fully be planned out before you guys got on stage?
I'll take this. No, it's all planned out. I think it would be interesting to create a piece that has a certain kind of randomness built in. But yeah, no, I felt like with this piece, I was really interested in telling, it's not necessarily a narrative story, but I wanted to be able to control the through line, and I felt like the orchestration of the drums was, and the specificity with which I orchestrate them was really important to be able to like execute certain harmonic decisions. Although I don't know, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of, there's no randomness in the drums, but there's a certain amount of chaos in the third movement, right? Because you're not playing to a click.
Yeah, sometime.
Right.
Any other questions? Well, I think we should say a giant thank you to Sam for being here with us tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks for writing us a beautiful piece of music. Also, I want to take this moment to thank other people. Of course, the wonderful staff of Constellation for being accommodating to us and for having us here tonight. Thank you all. Thank you, Nolan and Margaret. Thank you. We are also very fortunate to be supported by our community, and we feel very privileged to be supported not only by foundations, both local, national, specific, and general funding, but also to people like yourself in this room. A lot of people in this room are very generous, and we thank you so very much. It allows things like this to happen and allows us to be creative. We, as some of you know, this is going to be our final year together, but that does not mean that things are tapering off. It actually seems like there's as much to do than ever. We have recording projects, 3 or 4 or 5 recording projects that are going to be coming out in the next year and a half. We have big productions, as you've heard about with Enigma and a few others this spring. So we'd welcome your support still this year. We appreciate all those who give. So thank you so much. Also want to say again, thank you to Third Coast Percussion for being so generous and loaning us these drums tonight. They are on, again, yes, they're on tour right now. Otherwise, some of them I know would be here themselves. And so thank you to Third Coast Percussion. And we invite you to join us afterwards. Come hang out in the bar. We have cake. It has a funny image on it. We printed a funny image on a cake. You have to see it. Your reminder that your tickets are a drink ticket. Your first drink is on us. Well, on our very generous board of directors. Thank you, Nina Kim, for sponsoring the drinks. And thank you so much to Sam. I don't know where you are, Sam, who's here. Sam Orwig, who sponsored the cake tonight. So please stick around and hang out. So
Also, Alyssa, Autumn, and Yusuf.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
And Alyssa, yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so here we go. We hope you enjoy this time with feeling.